Hello and welcome to another edition of Razorwire Raw. This is the second episode, and today we're going to talk about something that's been concerning me for quite a while. Now, maybe there's a lot of people who are not going to thank me for this kind of video, but it's something that needs to be said. What I want to talk about is the effect of greed, of the effect of private equity and VCs within the information security sector. It's something that myself and a number of other business owners in this space have talked about very recently, actually, be they in IT, be they in information security, be they pen testing companies, be they consultancies like us, be they vendors, with a product, a service. Maybe it's SIEM, maybe it's GRC, maybe it's endpoint security, that kind of stuff. And one of the things that we have noticed in this industry is that things are getting immeasurably more expensive. Everything seems to be going up. If you're buying a product and you're getting renewals, you're starting to see some significant price rises. It started last year and it's continuing this year. If anything, it's getting a little bit worse this year. Cybersecurity itself is getting more and more expensive to undertake. And it's faster than I honestly believe that a lot of UK and European budgets can actually afford and absorb. It's not really about kind of who's to blame necessarily, although there is some discussions that need to be had. It's about what we do about it. And I'm not too sure at the moment that there is anything we can. Security is very much being priced out of reach for a lot of organizations. Baseline levels of security are getting more and more expensive, be it whatever the product may well be, or maybe you're getting a PCI audit, or maybe you're getting consultancy. And there's a reason for that. Over the last 8 years, I would say, and it kind of got expedited around about the time of the dreaded lurgy that had us all locked down for a year and a bit, and some of us for longer. Private equity and VC companies moved in very, very aggressively at that time to buy up as many organizations as possible. Let's face it, at the time, nobody really knew what was going on. We didn't really know how long this would last. There was a lot of kind of information coming out about how terrible this particular virus was. There was a lot of organizations all over the Western world who were taking out loans to cover the cost of maintaining their business in a world where we couldn't travel, we couldn't visit clients. Clients themselves were finding it very, very difficult to survive in some cases, especially in things like hospitality. Anything where there was a requirement for sort of like members of the public to come and purchase services, or even businesses to go and purchase services, was severely affected over that time period. And the unfortunate truth was there was a lot of private equity and VC firms who took advantage of that. I myself was approached a number of times for bargain basement prices to sell Razorthorn to these very same organizations who were seeing a very distressed area of business, albeit an area of business that was, thought to come back with reckless abandon. A lot of vendors sold their companies to these self-same organizations. It wasn't just consultancies that were going through it. It was also those vendors, MSPs. Everybody was kind of being affected by that. And that's how things work. We live in a capitalist society, whether you like it, whether you hate it. I'm not going to go into that. But, a lot of organizations were purchased. Now, a lot of PEs, a lot of VC companies, whether you know how they work, whether you don't know how they work, quite often what they will do is they will purchase an organization. They will stump up about 20%, sometimes a little bit more, of whatever fund they're managing. But then what they will do is they will go to a lending institution and they will get a loan for the rest of it. And then they will load that debt onto the organization they've purchased. So if they buy you for $1 billion, 20% of that is coming from the fund, 80% of that is coming in the form of some kind of loan facility. And they can push leverage. They then load the 800 million up onto the company that they've purchased to repay the loan. And then they aggressively do all kinds of different things to make efficiencies. Sometimes that's reducing people. Sometimes that's reducing some of the tools that those organizations use. And they also try to raise the profit as high as possible. The idea is over a 5-year period, let's just say, which seems to be pretty average, maybe a little bit higher, to push that EBITDA, which is the measure that a lot of organizations use for the profitability of an organization, up as high as possible. So after a 5-year mark, they then sell it on to somebody else for a significant profit, or that's the hope. Now, a lot of organizations sold out in that time. A lot of organizations sold out in the time between then and now. And when I mean sold out, I don't mean sold out as in, screw people over, but actually sold their organizations to these self-same companies. Now, some of these PE companies have created massive conglomerates where they've got multiple different organizations. They're trying to kind of purchase as many as possible to eat as much market share as possible. And that's definitely happened with consultancy. And it's very much happened with a lot of American money that's come in. And with that, yes, a lot of people have been made rich, but also we have started to see some aggressive price rising in renewals for consulting, for auditing, for vendor products, services, whatever it may well be. Now, some of the organizations such as ourselves who've kind of remained independent up until now, you never can tell what's going to happen in the future, have been trying to kind of maintain a status quo in an environment where a lot of these organizations are basically buying out the market and then raising prices up in line with what the American market pays, which is excessive from a UK and European point of view. Over in the States, it's pretty standard. When it comes to information security consultancy, say ISO 27001 consultancy, you're looking at about $3,500. It goes up, it goes down, or whatever, but it's quite significant, significantly higher than it is here in the UK and Europe. And we've seen a lot of our competitors, I'm going to go into that, who have raised their prices quite significantly. And that's led a lot of those customers who were getting services from them to come to organizations such as myself, most of them run by good friends of mine or people I know very, very well, who've kind of capitalized on this price increase. But then a lot of the firms, as they started getting popular, started getting bought out and so on and so forth. And it's become a bit of a bloodbath for your average business, because now as an average business, if you want to go out and you want to get some consultancy, some pen testing or whatever, you are seeing your prices rising rather significantly. And that's being put that it's due to inflation, that it's due to the changes that the UK government have done with national insurance. And there is some of that. Let's face it, the UK economy is not doing as great as it feasibly could be. And it's causing significant issues. But also when it comes to the vendor prices, as I keep toting, those prices have been going insane for a while. We have seen all kinds of rises, even into the 40% markups. And they're also, in many cases, slashing the commissions that organizations get for reselling their products from the more traditional sort of 20% down to sort of like 10 or 15, sometimes even lower, depending upon the situation, which is causing some significant issues, because a client is now, who's been utilizing this product and seeing, reasonable price rises for a reasonable amount of time now, starting to see these prices raise quite significantly, and they're pushing back. But they're not pushing back necessarily to the vendor. They're pushing back to the people who are reselling it on behalf of the vendor, because a lot of the big vendors are channel only, and it's causing some problems. A lot of organizations are starting to look for cheaper alternatives now, but the pool of cheaper alternatives are starting to rapidly reduce. I think a lot of American organizations, PEs, let's face it, PEs and VCs, are putting pressure on staff to do more with less, to sell more for higher, And a lot of these PEs and VCs that bought some of these firms earlier on are starting to hit that 5-year mark now, where they really, really want to kind of resell on the solution and probably get into AI. Let's face it, everybody seems to want to get into that particular bubble at this moment in time. There's plenty of stuff out there from some very, very big channels where you can go and find out a little bit more about that particular bubble. Well, let's be honest, it is a bubble and it is going to burst. I've been in this game for 30 years. I saw, the dot-com bust. I've seen all kinds of bubbles, and it's going to start to happen within infosec as well. Let's be honest, we can't keep raising prices and expecting customers to pay those prices. They can't afford it. Security is essentially, in my opinion, being priced out of the SMB market, and it's now going to be the province of very large organizations, because they're the ones that can pay those exorbitant prices, services and solutions that were quite accessible beforehand. And I think it's a big, big problem. When security becomes too expensive for an organization to do, organizations just stop buying. They start trying to manage their security in other ways, reducing the overheads. And because a lot of these tools are getting more and more expensive, less is actually being spent in many respects on staffing actual information security professionals who know what they're doing, who can facilitate the security that your organization has. But by some bizarre reason, maybe it's good marketing, maybe it's the perception that security is an IT thing, a lot of organizations continue to buy lots of tooling that they don't necessarily use as well as they should do. Or maybe they're just buying loads of tooling thinking it's going to secure them, when in actual fact it isn't. It might cover them for certain aspects, but it's not going to cover them for everything. So what do you sacrifice? You sacrifice your tools and the marketing that tells you that you need this tool, because if you don't have this tool, hackers are going to be all over you. Or do you believe information security professionals who are saying, stop, hang on a second, let's just stop and have a look and objectively review what our defense in depth looks like, and maybe rejig it in a way that makes it more affordable. But it's getting more and more difficult for us to do that, especially when, everybody seems to be constantly getting bought out. We're seeing a lot of consolidation. We're seeing a lot of change in the market. And I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon. But it does need to change, because I don't know where the security market is going to be in a year, 2 years' time. It's still going to be an important part of business. That isn't going to change. But what is going to change is whether or not we can actually afford it ourselves. And I think a lot of people are going to be pushing back towards, asking artificial intelligence, the large language models, for advisories on their security. And they can provide you with some stuff and some information, but it's not as good as somebody who's utilizing the wisdom of actually how things work, how the malicious actors work. And, an AI can't do that. Tooling can't do that. Tooling is there to support that information security function in the most efficient and effective way to help protect the organization. And if pricing continues the way it's going, we're not going to be able to do that. Budgets have to rise. Spending has to be spent in the right place, and it can't be spent in places like tooling. It really has to be reviewed completely, and going from, exactly what people are doing, how they're facilitating it, and starting with that good security personnel function, and then moving into those tools and services and what have you. Especially, if you've got a load of them at the moment, they need to be reviewed and they need to be sort of brought back in line. But anyway, I have a very short period of time, so that's all I can really say on this matter. Watch out. Do a review of your security. If you don't have people who are inside your organization to do it, then bring in somebody like ourselves or another organization who can help you do that. But this is Razorwire Raw. Thank you very much, and we'll be speaking to you again soon.